do
You want to
that.
start with the map?
No, that's fine.
Okay, we'll get to the map.
I just forgot where Bangladesh is.
We'll start with the map.
Bangladesh is near India.
Okay. I know where India is.
Bangladesh, right there.
So is that, oh, that's Bangkok.
And there's Nepal where it was like.
Yeah, so I've been
Yeah,
there,
that's
and
right.
I've been there.
And I've been
What's
down
over
there.
Right next to
You over
Bangladesh
here,
is
right?
Bengal.
No, on the other
Okay.
side.
Do you
Yeah, down
see
there.
West Bengal? So which
That's on
country
the
is
other side
that?
of Myanmar, right?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Because when we were in Thailand, the Burmese were the ones, all
Boys.
the construction workers and everything there.
There's a photo.
Ready? All right. So around, what was it, December 15th, 20th, somewhere around there, Samaritan's Purse sent out an email requesting for some help for the Rohingya people that were living in Myanmar, or living in Bangladesh. They'd set up a camp there to help the Rohingya people who had left Myanmar. The Rohingya people are stateless people, kind of like like the Jews with before Israel was formed again. They had been living in Myanmar. It used to be called Burma. Burma's been refuses them citizenship, refuses them rights in their own home country, and Myanmar didn't even count them on their last census that they took because they didn't think they were people. So they had, there's conflicting stories from both the Rohingya people and the people from Myanmar. Basically, from what I can understand, there was a little skirmish with the Myanmar people against the people, or sorry, against the Rohingya people against the Myanmar people, to which Myanmar retaliated against them by attacking different villages, civilians. They had, I think they killed up to 6,700 people. I believe 800 almost were like children under the age of 12. The biggest skirmish seems to be caused because of the conflict of religion. The Rohingya people are mostly Muslim, whereas the people of Myanmar are Buddhist. And the BBC article I read on this said that the troops were actually backed by the Buddhist mob that did all the killing. BBC described them as they are among the world's least wanted and most persecuted people. Burma denies them citizenship, refuses to let them own land. It did not allow them to travel or even marry without first seeking permission. When getting information from the people, when we were checking them in, when we were trying to give them like an armband just to keep track of them for our records, it was kind of difficult at first trying to let them know that we weren't the government seeking to like get their records and know about them, because the government would routinely come in and do censuses and check on them, and just seeing like who they were, who was the leaders of the villages, what they were doing there, just like extreme, like taking notes on everything they did, just so they knew where they were at, who they were. This is some of the images of the destruction from one of their villages. They had, all the purple you see there is villages that were destroyed. A lot of the villages were burned down where they were living. This is really what sparked the mass exodus. They had is anywhere between 600, I think it's 600,000 people that fled to the Cox's Bazar in Bangladesh, and then almost 1 million total have fled since this all started about a year and a half ago. The majority of them left in August, kind of right around that time period. The Rohingya people, there's not many of them. There's about 1 million people worldwide, 1.5 million. if you try and find their language online, you won't find it. I was looking for YouTube videos on how to speak their language, and it's such a rare language that there's not, like, you can't just pull up Duolingo, or even Mango, which has all kinds of different languages, doesn't have it. So when we got into the country, we were using translators that had to know both Bengali, English, and then also the language of the Myanmar people, or the Rohingya people, and even just the Rohingya people themselves have so many different tribes and variations that it was super complicated getting anyone that knew their languages well enough. And so diphtheria was what we went in as Samaritan's Purse to treat. We were invited by the World Health Organization. Bangladesh is a closed country. It doesn't openly allow Christian organizations or evangelical churches into openly witness. So the invitation by World Health was super important. We wouldn't have gotten in any other way without being invited directly from the World Health Organization. The diphtheria is a disease that really hasn't been seen since the 90s in a huge outbreak. Most of the research they did, trying to form the protocols for the hospital, they were pulling from data back in the 20s and 30s, because that was when it was most prevalent. The mortality rate in it is anywhere between 5-10%, and then up to 20% for people under, I think it was under 5 years and over 40 years. And then before they had started treatment with antibiotics and the vaccines, it could be fatal up to 50% of the cases. One of the biggest things we do for, like, we don't hear about diphtheria treatment here, mostly because of prevention. We almost all get the tetanus Tdap vaccine as a child, and then when you get your TB shot every 10 years or so, that also contains diphtheria antivirus in it. So we got there and they were telling us this, and we're like, oh, so the tetanus shot's got diphtheria. We didn't even know that, most of us. We get there, and one of the doctors, our head physicians, talking to us, and he's like, oh yeah, so they're looking at the research on it, and they're like, yeah, we should probably get a diphtheria booster about every 3 years too. And so as long as you had your tetanus shot within the last 3 years, you're pretty good. And we all looked around. I think like one of the 20 of us there had it in the last 3 years. So we're all, broad spectrum antibiotics do a pretty good job inoculating it. It'll kill the actual bacteria. The problem with the diphtheria is the diphtheria itself produces a toxin, which is excreted from the bacteria. So even though you kill the bacteria itself, the toxin's still like running rampant in your system. The diphtheria antitoxin is actually what helps kills off the symptoms of the actual toxin being produced. And then there's a lot of pain management for the pain and swelling in the neck. So diphtheria normally presents as normally they'll have a little bit of swelling under the neck, a little bit of swelling in the cheeks. Most of those we're not always totally sure if it's diphtheria or something else. They have a lot of mumps break out, which is a lot of swelling in the cheeks. It's kind of like a chipmunk style. So we'll keep those patients for a couple days, give them the antibiotics just in case, and then we'll let them go because it only takes 48 hours for them to be non-infectious. The real sign of diphtheria is when they've got a pseudomembrane, is what we call it, and they'll start out with little white patches on the back of their tonsils, and then it starts to, and the toxins secreted from the bacteria start to just coat the insides of the throat, and that can cause it to swell up and give you lots of respiratory problems, and that's what causes the fatality part of the disease most of the time. So again, more pictures of Bangladesh is right here, Myanmar is over here. This right down here, the bottom corner of the M, is actually the Cox's Bazar, and that's where all the people, I think most of the Rohingya people were kind of lined up on this side of Myanmar and came into this small spot here. About 600,000 to 1 million people settled in this little spot. Again, you can see a little bit better, and the Cox's Bazar and kind of the region they were at is all along here. Up just a little bit north of here. This was the style of camp they had lived in. A lot of this had been forested, at least with some form of vegetation before they moved in. A lot was taken down for either construction of the housing or fuel for fires or cooking for food. Basically, they come in, they level off the ground, terrace it off, and then they'll put up a couple bamboo beams for the houses, and then either most of the time it's tarps and trash bags, and then other times it's like a tin roof or something if they're lucky. The biggest worry right now is that they're about a month to 2 months away from the rainy season, and about 20% of the land they've built on is in very high risk of mudslides, landslides. So they're working desperately trying to find a solution for that right now. So this was at the hospital. We had one of the nationals there do a painting of the Good Samaritan for us. A couple other paintings. These are a couple of the girls there. So most of our patients there were under 14 years old. I would say about 90% of them. So we got to have a lot of fun with them. They really enjoyed the little mask and stuff. This is one of the girls here. They didn't have much, but they still dressed really nicely. A couple of the, 2 of the doctors and a couple of the nurses playing around there. These are some of the kids on the outside the hospital. I was pulling up balloons for them, and they started chasing me around. So we went through a lot of balloons.
It looks like gloves.
Yeah, gloves. Sorry. The quality decreased about halfway, and like about every other one of them started to blow up. So I learned how to blow up the fingers eventually. There are lots of goats running around just all random spots. But this kid had my failed attempt of a glove there.
What's the fence for?
They had built that, I think, while we were there. It's just, this is outside our property, just right outside of it. And I'm guessing just like kind of as a property marker. This house on the right side there was built within like about a week. You just turn around and look, and all of a sudden it's flat over there, and there's a house there. You can see the blue flag there. It's actually a Samaritan's Purse tarp. They were lying for about a mile, 1 to 3 miles along the road. Just little poles like pointing people to the direction of our hospital. The people don't really understand. Not many of them know how to write or read. So giving them instructions and giving them something and having them be able to do it again was really difficult. It's like, take your pills once a day for 7 days or 14 days for the patient. And telling that through 2 different languages and then to the patient and having them remember it was very difficult. This is one of the paintings I did there. These were some of the girls playing with some of the balloons I had blown up. They really enjoyed it. I think the girl on the right No, the girl on the right didn't have it. It was actually the mom for that one that had gotten sick. She was put in our ward number 5 is what we called it. We had 5 wards built by the time I left. The first one was where we gave the antitoxinate. The second one, we kept the people that had gotten the antitoxin there. They were our red or unstable patients. And then the third one we had, we had our isolations and stuff there. We had a suspected TB, or we had a confirmed TB infection. We had lots of mumps. We had a measles case. We had a chickenpox case. So we got our fair share of infectious diseases while we were there. This is one of the translators, Nike. He was really good. He knows 9 languages. He's been to like that many countries or more. He sparked a conversation about how many languages I knew. I'm like, yeah, I'm an idiot. I just know 1. And he's like, well, how many languages do you write? Yeah, the same amount. Thanks a lot. So one of the shops along the road, most of them sell like just some chips and a couple other like just prepackaged food. These were some of the children in the camp. The camp and everywhere in Bangladesh was just covered in smog. They burned all the trash there. The air quality was really bad there. A lot of the kids we ended up, some of the worst ones were a mix of either possible diphtheria and asthma or just asthma. We had one kid that came in with severe asthma that they ended up being able to save his life. And again, you can see just like the packed housing in the background. Most of these all have like orange roofs on the top of them. But everything was kind of just built into the hills. There's like a couple walking paths. Some of them you could stand over, like this hill here, you could stand over and you look down. I mean, you got like 400 kids just walking along the road and you look over the edge and they're just running along the edges and stuff. Right next to like a 100-foot drop off. Some of them walking up hills about like this. I think these were a bunch of people waiting out for a food distribution there. That was one of the vans we rode in. Most of the vehicles were a lot smaller than us, which was comforting. The travel there wasn't awful. I've been in much worse in Nepal. Our driver, for some reason, had a thing against the little, they call them tom-toms. It's like little 3 vehicles. And whenever he saw them, he would swerve into them. Not really sure what that was all about. Wasn't a Samaritan, it was a local driver, yeah. So he didn't like them very much.
That's a fun guy.
Yeah. Rice was their main crop. We had just got there as they were starting to plant it again. Bangladesh is situated on a delta, so there's a huge water basin there. And they've got these well houses all around that just pump up the water and then flood the fields for their rice planting. It's one of the girls in the camp there. Anytime white people showed up, a lot of other people showed up too. They really enjoyed following us. So a little bit wider picture, you can just see the little orange sheds are their bathrooms. They've got their squatty potties. We got like a little well dug into there, and one of the big concerns is you can look and see.
That's the potty?
Yep, that's the potty, and then there's their water right there too. So lots of contamination problems. potential problems.
I think you should have told them to put the potty somewhere else.
Yeah. Yeah. They had lots of people working on that. And I'm not, some of these may be bathhouses, so they're not all necessarily, not all of them are necessarily bathrooms, but again, there's just a lot of unsanitary conditions. They've done a lot of planning for cholera outbreak. They're not sure if that's going to happen or not, but there's been a lot of prevention going in for it. When you look out here, you notice there's one solar panel in this picture. Everybody else really doesn't have power. I think it got better as the month progressed, but you'd look out and you'd see, I mean, you just know it's like, look out into the darkness as you were driving home. You know, like, there's a million people out there, and there wasn't a single light bulb. Just completely pitch black. Most of them, I've been to like a couple different third world countries, and you look around and you see everyone's still talking on their cell phones. Like even Nepal, it was up in the top of the mountains, and there's a guy on his cell phone. And most of these people didn't have cell phones. Didn't even if they did, they were kind of like the old track phone, Nokia phones, little tiny ones that didn't do much of anything. And some of them had like solar powered lanterns or something, but just not a lot of light for the area. The scariest night we had there was about 4 a.m, and just all of a sudden hear a scream coming out of this camp. And at this point I hadn't even been back in there, and you look out into the darkness and there's just, you're just hearing hundreds of voices just screaming, and it kept getting closer and closer, and for about 10 minutes we were running around. We were about to get in the van and leave just because we thought there was a mob heading our way. Thankfully we had a national there that had made some calls, and I guess there was an elephant running around in their camp. It was just completely pitch black too, so they actually never even confirmed that it was an elephant because nobody had enough light to see it. So more of the kids, these were some of the happiest kids I've ever seen too. They're very, very happy. Some of them, like I'd show up and learn to play hide and go seek with them behind my little clipboard, and they'd just like bust up laughing every time. This was the clinic here. You can see that's our 4th building, and then our 2nd building that you can see there. This is one of our patients. No. This is one of our goats. There are goats wandering around, and this one of our translators would just randomly go pick up a goat and bring it through every once in a while. I stuck a mask on him one day, so the children really like to see him running through. These were a couple of the girls that were there. They had gotten the IV diphtheria antitoxin. So the treatment that we did for that, they'd get an IV put in. It was only people with either a bull neck, which is what they called it, when it was swelling enough that it could interfere with the airway, or they had the pseudomembrane, which is, again, the big white lining on the back of the throat. So those were the people that got the diphtheria antitoxin. It's actually derived from horse serum. It was kind of thick. It was a little bit more thick than water. It was a very, very slow, tedious process giving it. It took about, I think the fastest we ever got one in was 5 hours. Most of them took 6 or 7 hours to give. And the drug was a one-on-one drip, or it was supposed to be. So that was one nurse with one patient. You couldn't have any other patients, shouldn't be doing anything else while you gave it. It caused severe or started moderate allergic reactions in probably about 80% of the people we gave it to. And severe reactions in about 5 to 10%. We had several, probably about 5 or 10 of them that started having airway problems and like extreme severe respiratory problems and other anaphylaxis reactions from the medication out of the 150 or so that we had given by the time I was there. So most of them, we'd start them off with Benadryl, and then give them, that would get them kind of sleepy, lower their chance of reaction. We'd inject a little bit into their skin. We'd give a small dose in one side, and then we'd give a slightly bigger dose. It was literally, I think it was 0.1 mLs and then 0.25 mLs. So I mean, just itty bitty drops of this stuff as an injection. And if they reacted to that, then we would dose them on an even higher Benadryl and steroid ratio and try and give it, and we would give it, again, we'd start, and if they reacted to that, the process about doubled because we gave them a desensitization protocol, which would require putting like drops into the IV, like one at a time every 15 to 30 minutes. It was like one drop every 15 minutes, and it was diluted like 1,000 times more than it normally would be. And then we'd slowly decrease the dilution rate and slowly increase the amount we gave. We had some of the patients didn't have any reaction to the skin test, and then the instant the first drop went in, anaphylactic reaction. Just hives everywhere, respiratory distress. And then again, we would immediately stop it. One of my kids, I think the second night I was there, started having an anaphylactic reaction, and so I clamped the drug off, and we started giving him steroids, we started giving him epi, and then about 10 minutes later, we're still kind of managing the kid, treating him, and I look up, and another 100 mLs of the drug had infused into him after it was clamped shut. So just the quality of like the stuff we were working with wasn't nearly what it was here. So you change the rate of the drug about, I think it was every 15 to 30 minutes for the first little bit, and it took about 15 minutes to get the roller clamp to cooperate enough that you could get it anywhere close to the right amount. This little boy, I think that's him. I don't know what it's doing. Is it ready? He came in really sick and just was a hoot ever since he got better. He actually locked a couple of the girls in the bathroom. The doors locked from both sides to keep him from swinging open, and I guess he took it upon himself to lock them in there. So you just hear his laugh that he was there for like I think 3 days because he was so much more sick than most of the patients, and he'd laugh and laugh the whole time he was there. Damon was the engineer there, and he built a swing, he built a seesaw. He's basically the guy that did the whole thing here. You can see, so they're preparing for the rainy season. They've got ditches dug in between each and every one of the tents and along the sidewalks, trying to prepare for all the rain coming in, trying to keep everything from washing away. So that's what's lined with bamboo there. We did get a few decent meals while we were there. We stayed at a really nice resort because there's no room for us anywhere close to the hospital. It's about an hour drive away from the hospital, so we made our days about 14 to 15 hours long. But at least we got to eat good food and get a good night's rest. So just the people, everything was so densely packed there, and the logistics of trying to be able to feed us anywhere else it was too complicated, so I didn't mind it. The pineapple juice was good. There's their number one building construction supply over there. This was what I entertained the kids with a couple nights, so they really enjoyed that. There's another one of the, this was one of the fingers off the gloves that had popped. Yep. There's one of the girls. hiding from me. I would peek my head in the tents, and they just all start screaming and giggling at me, or throwing balloons at me. This was one of the tom-toms. It was one of the lower things on the hierarchy of the roads. Basically, the right-of-way was how big you were. So again, we were 90% bigger than everything out there, so we had the right-of-way most of the time. Didn't matter if you had sirens and lights flashing or with the military. I mean, you all pretty much, you fought for whatever you wanted. So this was one of the rickshaw things they had there, pedal powered. They're really ornate, have a lot of like fancy detail work to them and stuff. Look pretty cool. Brought glow sticks one night. That was fun. Another one of the patients there. This was inside the tents. You can kind of see we could fit. I think it was about 30. It was about 30 patients. 24 to 30 patients in the tents. Each section of them, they'd get 4 in a section. There'd be about 4 or 5 sections in each of them. The blue curtain over there was for the patients with diphtheria on their skin. It doesn't always present as like a bacterial infection inside of you. Some of them can come in with a rash. That's actually diphtheria. That one was a little bit more difficult to determine what it really was. But that one was also the most contagious, so we tried to kind of segregate them off from the rest of everyone else. This was night shift right outside of the hospital there. They're working on like some of the fencing and stuff over in the corner here. It's all bamboo weaved together. These are a lot of little fingers blown up and markered up. This was our infinity pool at the hotel. That's pretty nice. So one of the nights I wore my hoodie there, and it was a Mercy and SBU hoodie. And so there's a big Mercy with a cross on there, and all these people they were just excited to see English words. So one of the guys asked me to write Mercy on there, and so I put Mercy on there, and then he pointed to the cross and he's like, I want that on there too. So I went ahead and put that on it for him, and then all of the kids in there wanted it, and I think they were all leaving that day, so most of them went home, like 5 or 6 of them went home with a big balloon with Mercy and a cross on it. So that was pretty exciting. This was Lookman, not Lookman, Asamal. And he was one of the translators there. And then 2 of the Bengali nurses in the background. I was at the hotel again. Just in between the tents, you can kind of see the rows there. One of the fishing boats outside the hotel. Some of the traffic.
He was bigger than you.
Yeah, he was. He got the right of way. Didn't matter how long or how hard we honked the horn either. But this is looking into the camp from the street. The road we took was about on the edge of the road, on the edge of Cox Bazar. So you would be driving up and all along the right for like the last 10 miles of the trip. You just see house after house, and it kept getting more and more densely populated. I think that's it. There's some stuff if you wanted to come up and look at it. Do you have any questions? Maybe?
Okay, so what is their original country?
I think it was, let's see, so Myanmar claimed that they came from Bangladesh. So I'm not sure really where they originated from after that, before that, but I think they kind of hopped from Bangladesh to Myanmar and now back to Bangladesh. Bangladesh is working with Myanmar and the UN and a couple other people trying to get them back because Myanmar or Bangladesh really doesn't want the people either. So they're trying to figure out a way to get them back to their original home country.
Okay, Bangladesh is Muslim, correct?
Yes. So again, Myanmar, they submitted an idea of taking back, I think it was 1,000, like 100 or 1,000 people a week or something. It was a much smaller percentage with the hope of getting them all back in like 2 years or something. Except the problem was they're like offering them housing. And so the Myanmar people are saying, oh yeah, well, we've got housing and villages for you. And kind of the concerns of us there is like, they're probably just heading back for a concentration camp. It's kind of what it sounds like. And they won't let very many non-government organizations work with them. There's not many people in the country. The UN's not been given access to the oversight